Hello lovely people and welcome back to my channel. So today's video is going to be a little bit of testing new products out together with me because I have recently acquired a couple of new makeup items after a relatively short but subjectively prolonged period of makeup drought. Drought, is that how you pronounce it? You know, when there's no water for a while? So the point I was trying to make is it's been a while since I bought any makeup and it wasn't really a big deal. I just really wasn't attracted to anything, and then the first thing that really caught my eye recently was the Millennial Pinx palette from Melt Cosmetics. So that is what we're going to be doing today. We're going to be trying this palette, and I'm extremely curious to try it because this palette has split the internet into I love it versus I hate it sort of situation. For those of you who are not aware of this, Melt Cosmetics released a Valentine's Day themed release, and this was the palette that goes with the release. It's called Millennial Pinx, and it is a beautiful combination of pinks, like reddish pinks, and some grey tones here in the end. And personally, I have always really loved the combination of pink and grey. I know for a lot of people it didn't really seem like it makes a lot of sense. I personally really like it. From what I have seen, these greys here have a very strong blue tone to them, which is, I think, a very smart move from Melt, because it means when you mix them in with the pinkish mattes, you're going to create somewhat more purplish hues. Anyways, the palette looks absolutely beautiful. The packaging is so stunning. I really love this shade of pink. I don't really wear pink much, also in terms of like clothing and accessories, but if I do, it's going to be this kind of pink because I think it is absolutely gorgeous. It has sort of like a textured front of the packaging. The back side of the palette isn't textured, but it does have the Millennial Pinx written in different sort of font, which is sort of like iridescent, which is also really cool. I don't have any idea whether it's coming across on camera, but it is there just in case you were curious. I went a little bit through the ingredient list and I was a little bit disappointed not to see synthetic fluorphlogopite in their ingredient list, because last time I bought a Melt palette, I went through the ingredient list and I saw that synthetic fluorphlogopite was one of the top ingredients, which is synthetic mica. It is a fairly expensive ingredient, and that sort of categorized Melt for me as a somewhat more luxurious brand in terms of their eyeshadow formula. From what I can tell, these shadows are a bit more mica based, although what I also see, and I think those are maybe more luxurious ingredients, are calcium aluminium borosilicate and calcium titanium borosilicate, which are both like, I don't know, little pieces of glass. Don't be scared, they're not going to catch your eyes or anything. They're completely cosmetic grade safe. It's just that I think those are ingredients I've also seen in Pat McGrath eyeshadows, especially the more sparkly eyeshadows. But that being said, I thought for the prices, I hope this is not a mica based palette. Anyway, this was sort of a tangent that you probably don't really care about, but it is something that I immediately noticed because it's something that I personally find very interesting, to compare like ingredients of eyeshadows and make a little bit of an assumption of where the price differences come from, because it cannot just be the brand name. So the other couple of products that I obtained are, okay, let's talk about this brush, because I got it together with the Millennial Pinx palette. It was a purchase that I made from Beauty Bay, because Melt Cosmetics stocks on Beauty Bay. I believe the palette is still in stock if you're in Europe and you're curious about this palette. So I bought this brush, which is from a company called My Kit Co. It came in this packaging, this really cute little Ziploc baggie here. It was that one single brush that came in there, but the brush looks like this. It has a really beautiful, like, sort of light blue handle, and I particularly found the shape of the brush very interesting because it's a very small fluffy blender, but it's also like very thin, so I think it's perfect for blending things out on the lower lash line. I'm always on the lookout for brushes that can blend out the lower lash line without taking the eyeshadow too far, because I don't personally like that on myself. Maybe also for outer corner work. It's a really nifty little brush and I'm really curious to try it, and I've never heard anything about this brand. The more interesting purchases in terms of brushes that I made are, I finally decided to bite the bullet and order 2 Sonia G brushes from Beautylish. If you guys don't know, Sonia G is a blogger. I think she's a blogger who is sort of obsessed slash an expert in makeup brushes. She makes her brushes in Japan, in a Japanese makeup brush artisan house. So they are, you know, the handmade, very special, very fancy Japanese style brushes. The 2 brushes that I have are the Crease Pro and the Builder Pro. So this is the Builder Pro, which is basically a flat shader brush, which is made of dark goat hair. I'm really curious about it. It's like quite a stiff kind of brush. It seems very soft. The handles are really, really beautiful. They're like this tapered. How do you say that? They are fatter and they taper towards the end. The other brush that I got is the Crease Pro, which is white goat hair, and it has like a beautiful pointy tip to it, and I am always on the lookout for brushes which give me precision when I apply eyeshadows on the outer corner, and especially if I want to take them out into an outer V shape. So I'm curious about this brush, and I'm just generally curious about Sonia G brushes, because of course those are the only other reference that I have to compare with my M brushes from Maxineshka. So just in case you guys were curious, because I think a lot of you are probably going to ask about it, I don't know whether the white goat hair on these is a different quality than these at this point, because I haven't really used them extensively to tell. But just based on like pure aesthetics, I'm gonna say both are really, really beautiful. But I don't feel like the M brushes are inferior in any way, because the M brushes have this beautiful like rose golden ferrule to them, which is a really beautiful touch. They have like actually a very similar like burgundy style brush handle, and they also feel like they're very luxuriously made. Oh, another thing I wanted to mention, the Sonia G brushes came in very minimal packaging. They just came in this little plastic protector thing with what I'm guessing is the logo of the Japanese artisan house here, and my M brushes by comparison came in really luxurious like triangular paper boxes. I'm going to link the video where I reviewed the M brushes for you, so you can check it out and you can see what I'm talking about in terms of packaging. I don't anymore have these boxes because they're quite bulky, so yes, one could argue that it is quite wasteful to package each of these brushes individually like that, but at the same time, when you're talking about a luxurious experience in brushes, I do feel like the M brushes nailed it a little bit more in terms of that luxurious experience. I'm not sure whether Sonia G brushes always arrive in this sort of minimal plastic packaging, or it was just, you know, mine were packaged like that, but I'm actually really curious. Can you please let me know in the comment section if you receive like a brush set? Do they also come like this, like individually packaged in like this, or do you get a somewhat fancier packaging? Not that it matters all that much, but I think it contributes a little bit to the luxury experience. Having rambled more than enough, I think it is time for us to dig into the Millennial Pinx palette. I don't know if I'm going to do swatches of the palette, maybe for a first impression not. If I decide to do a review, then I will do like extensive swatching, but for now we're just going to do a look, and I've already thought about the look I wanted to do much before I even got the palette, but basically I want to do something with actually minimal use of the pinks and more heavy use of the grays in combination with the pinks. So what I think I'm going to do is just go for the look that I have in mind and see what happens. I'm going to start my look off with this shade here, which is like a very light toned peach, and I might mix it in a little bit with this one, which has a bit more like peachy pink tones to it. So both of these are mattes. I might mix them in together, but I'm going to go in first with the light shade just to see how it pulls on my skin. And for that I'm going to use a very large fluffy brush. This one is from M Brush. I want to use brushes from M Brush so that I can compare them to the Sonia G brushes a little bit as I go along this video. Oh, when I picked this up it actually looks much more pink than I thought. Okay, well, I'm going to work this shade into the outer corner and then bring it very high up into the crease. Okay, this is a very pastel pink shade. Personally, I'm not a huge fan of like pastel tones because I feel like they have a lot of white base to them, and that makes them always look chalky, and they always make the skin a little bit more aged and dry. So personally, I'm not a huge fan of these kind of eyeshadows, like shadows with these pastel undertones to them. But this is fine, it's blending out really well. Now I'm going to dip into the shade next to the very light peachy pink, which is somewhat deeper. It has almost like tropical bird undertones, if that's a thing. Ooh, this is nice. I do like these two shades mixed together a bit more than the pastel shade on its own, not gonna lie. And my M brush is really, really soft. Just FYI, I've had this brush for over a year and I've washed it multiple times because I have to wash my brushes, you guys, after every time I use them. I don't know how people do not wash their brushes, especially if they use really dark colors. Like my face brushes, bronzer, blush, highlighter, that kind of thing, I can do with like washing them every 1.5 to 2 weeks. But I swear to God, I have no idea how people don't wash their eye brushes often. This is looking really, really pretty. I really like how this blended out. Now, we're going to go in with one of my Sonia G brushes. I'm going to take the Crease Pro and I am going to dip into... This is going to be a bit scary because this shade looks really deep. I'm going to go into this mid-tone dark gray because this one's even deeper. In the photos they look a little bit like the last shade, Euphoria, should be a black, but honestly it looks like a really, really, really deep navy gray, if that makes any sense. Anyway, I'm going to go in with the lighter gray because I'm really scared of the super dark gray, and I'm going to just pick up a little bit on the tip of the brush, and I'm going to start taking it here into a sort of like almost like a wing shape. So far the brush is quite pleasant to use because it's quite rigid, it doesn't have a lot of give, which is good when you're applying shades like this because you don't really want to misplace a dark eyeshadow like this and then have to deal with the consequences. Okay, now let's use the same brush and start blending the gray out into the outer V. I just cleaned it off a little bit on a little tissue that I have here. I'm going to take it out and then slightly bring it in, and I'm also just going to slightly blend out everything that I laid down so far in terms of the dark gray. As usual, when you work with a dark shade like this, you do have to take your time. There's no amount of quality of eyeshadow will make it blend out by itself. You are going to have to work a little bit at it. When I heard the name of this palette, one of the first things I thought to myself was, am I a millennial? And I was pretty sure that I'm not a millennial. I thought that I was Gen X. Apparently I am a millennial. I'm like an early millennial. I was born in 1983, which is technically still a millennial. So I belong to the generation that remembers what it's like not to have the internet, Google, Wikipedia, mobile phones, none of that luxury crap. If you were late to meet with your friend, there was no way to let them know that you were late because there were no mobile phones. Can you imagine there was a time like that? Sometimes even I find it hard to imagine. Okay, I'm going to just slightly deepen up here in the very deep part of the crease and outer corner. Now I'm going to take the big blender brush again and just slightly blend around here. I'm going to grab Firenze Pixie Epoxy, which is a glitter glue. If you've never been around my channel before, welcome. I always use a glitter glue when I apply metallic eyeshadows because I feel like that is the best way to get the maximum out of my metallic eyeshadows. Eyeshadows with glitter, shit like that. Okay, and now we're really going to put the Sonia G brushes to the test because I'm going to take the Builder Pro and I'm going to dip into the metallic gray silver over here, and I'm going to use that brush to apply the shade on my lid. I always use my fingers for shades like this normally, so let's see how the Builder Pro will perform. I'm going to do the brush on this eye and then I'm going to go in with my finger on the other eye just to see what the difference between both methods of application is. Okay, we are not quite done yet with the metallic eyeshadows yet. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to actually wet the brush, and I'm going to go in with this shade here, which is like a very light, like champagne bubbly pink. It looks really beautiful. It has the most beautiful reflex to it. I swatched it yesterday on my lid and it looked so beautiful, and I want to put that shade over top of the silver to give it a little bit of a pink hue. Ooh, this is quite intense. Okay, I think I overdid it a little bit. It's starting to look a bit textured. Now I'm going to use that same Sonia G brush to just blend around the edges here. It's quite soft and it allows for that. I'm actually going to use the very same brush, and I'm going to dip into this beautiful champagne peach pink duochrome to put that in my inner corners, because this brush has somewhat of a pointy tip, and I think it might work really well for inner corner highlights too. Seems to be working just fine. Okay, now I'm actually going to take this very same brush, the Builder Pro, and I'm going to dip into the dark gray again, and I'm going to use that pointy end of the brush, to apply the gray shade along my lower lash line as well. Now, I don't know if I'll really get the chance to use this brush today, because honestly I feel like the two Sonia G brushes are working perfectly fine in unison to create the look for me, so the only thing I had to pull in extra was a bigger blending brush. For my waterline, I'm going to use this double-ended Kiko eyeshadow stick, and I'm going to apply the slightly more pinky nude in my waterline. And last but not least, I'm going to take the sort of mid-toned pinky red, this one over here, just on the tip of my brush. And I'm going to apply that here to connect with the peachy pink inner corner and the gray. I'm actually going to spritz my brush a tiny bit, just so it applies a bit more wet and it doesn't fly all over my eyeball. So you guys, this is the final look. So this is the complete look together with the lips. I just wanted to show you what I did for my lips, because I did actually test another new product. This is not something that I bought myself, but it was a present from one of my friends at work. This is one of the Kiko lip pencils, and this one is in the number 505, which is a gorgeous, very light pink, but not a very nude pink. It looks absolutely beautiful. I really love how this glided on the lips. It was very smooth, very soft, no tugging at all. The color is really lovely. It's a very soft pink, and I use it as a base to apply a little bit of my Ellie Angelic lip gloss from Pat McGrath, which has the most beautiful pink reflex to it, and it works really beautifully with this look. Okay, and let's just jump into my first impressions of the products that I used. So as far as the brushes are concerned, this is a no-brainer. I loved both brushes. They're such a delight to work with. They're so multifunctional because of the way they're shaped and the way the brushes feel. I wanted to just show you for comparison purposes, because I feel like this is the only brush that I have that resembles one of the Sonia G brushes. This is my M brush number 29, which is also sort of like a flat shader brush. But when I compare it to the Sonia G brush, the two have very subtle differences in terms of their shape and in terms of how flexible or rigid the bristles are and how fluffy they are. The M brush has somewhat more give to it, and the hairs are a little bit more fluffy, so it's a little bit more difficult to put something and blend it out without it really flying everywhere. Whereas with the Sonia G brush, it has this beautiful pointed tip to it, so you can have a lot of precision when you apply product, but at the same time it doesn't have too much give to it, so you're not going to end up blending the product away too much. It's just, there's something very subtle but very beautiful about the way the Sonia G brush is made. Two brushes from Sonia G, a total win. I'm definitely going to be looking into more of her brushes, especially when she releases the Sky set in individual brushes. And I would be actually more than happy to hear your recommendations for me personally from her lineup. And now let's quickly talk a little bit about the Millennial Pinx palette. How do I feel about it? So, I like the look that I created, but I'm not crazy about it. It's not like one of my favorite looks that I've ever done. It's definitely not something that looks very exciting when I stand in artificial lighting or when I shine my camera light on it. Normally when I shine my camera light on, say, Pat McGrath eyeshadows, they're like a glitter explosion. They're so beautiful. These are a little bit more subtle. And the thing that I wanted to mention that so the mattes for me blended out really beautifully. I did not have any issues with the mattes. If anything, I quite enjoyed the mattes. The metallics, on the other hand, they're nice, but they're the kind of flaky metallics that can create a lot of texture on your lids. And when I applied only the gray silver shade, so only this one, it was a little bit less visible, but as soon as I layered on top this shade, oh, things became very flaky and very textured very quickly. And I can say that's something I appreciate about these eyeshadows. I'm going to mention one thing. My Melt Cosmetics Smoke Sessions palette, when I use the more blue-toned greens, especially like the lightest shade in the palette, that one also has this flaky feeling to it, and I always feel like it looks a bit flaky and textured on my lids, and that's probably the reason why I prefer to use this palette for the olive greens, because the olive greens and the gold are absolutely stunning. They're like molten metal on your lids, whereas some of the metallic shades from Melt Cosmetics, and I noticed this with the shades that I used so far today, especially these two that I used on my lid, they can look a little bit flaky and a little bit textured, which I don't really like. So I'm going to have to see how I work with this palette. I don't want to say that I don't like it, because that's not the case. I do like it, and I think there's a lot more to be done with it and a lot more to be tried before I have a final verdict on it. But as of now, it leaves me a little bit lukewarm. That's all I'm gonna say. Anyway, thank you so much for watching, guys. Let me know what you think about the look and what you think about the palette and how it performed, even if you just saw it via the screen, because I think there's still a lot to be, seen via the screen. Like I said, for now I feel lukewarm about it. I'm curious what you think based on what you saw. I'm gonna run to work now. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you in my next video. Bye!